and you're very welcome to the CitA Tech Trend 2020 series. This morning we're going to be focusing on Microsoft Teams. My name is Alan Hoare from TU Dublin in the School of Surveying and Construction Management, and I'm also one of the founders of the Construction IT Alliance over 2 decades ago. Before I start, I'd like to thank our sponsors for this morning: DiTech, DCT Group, Evercan, I3PT, and SIS. I'd also like to thank Microsoft and Cloud Assist for working with us this morning on this, what I believe is an important session. I do hope you're all well at this time and your families. This is an extraordinary time for the world and indeed for our country. Well, I suppose the use of remote working is going to be very much part of our lives now and into the future as we try to get rid of this dreadful pandemic. So the title of this morning's event is Driving Productivity when Working Remotely with Microsoft Teams. As you can see from the screen there, we've got a great lineup of speakers. I'm going to get each of the speakers to individually introduce themselves prior to their presentation. So our first speaker is Sean Brady. Sean is the co-founder of Cloud Assist, and he'll be speaking this morning about best practice to adopt Microsoft Teams for secure collaboration. I'd like you all to turn off your cameras and also to pop and your microphones, and to put any questions you might have into the chat function, and I'll be reviewing them as the presentations occur. I suppose what's unique about this morning, whilst we have 3 excellent IT experts and training experts presenting this morning, we also have integrated into this event this morning 3 insights from industry. So we have contributions from Ralph Montague from ArcDocs and from Richard O'Farrell from EDC, and also from John Kerrigan of Leica Geosystems. Delighted also that Dermot Rice, Managing Director of Priority Management Training, is here, and also Conor Deegan, Chief Operating Officer from Teams Assist. So Sean, are you ready to regale us with your story?
Yes, Alan, thank you very much.
So Sean, can you stop sharing, and Sean, can you share your screen? You're very welcome.
Great, thank you again, Alan, for that, and also for setting this up. Alan and I have never met in person. It was all because of a conversation I had with Ralph Montague, who will be speaking later. He introduced me to CitA. And obviously, construction has been a part of our history. We've been part of the Lean Construction Ireland initiative. And we were the collaboration pillar lead for a time. And obviously, it's a great initiative to see happening. But remote work is something that's come crashing into our lives. And Teams, I was just saying to Alan earlier before the call started, Microsoft Teams has quadrupled since COVID. So from 20 million daily users, active daily users, to 80 million. So I think a lot of you have heard about Teams in the last few weeks. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to share my screen now and talk about, a second here, I'm going to share my screen so we can actually talk about the best practice when collaborating securely with Teams. So it's actually very interesting. For us, remote working has been part of our DNA for 3 years, and I'll talk about that, how that history came about. But our history with Microsoft is that we've been a Microsoft Gold Partner since 2010. So the entire journey of Office 365, which Teams is part of, we've been there with Microsoft. It's been an interesting journey because back in 2010, people were concerned about cloud and concerned about what that would mean for security. Now everyone has accepted cloud as the right way to go. What we have also done at Cloud Assist is we're 100% remote, and we're fully location-less. Now, this is a new term that people talk about in the remote working space. It means that we give up our offices. We had offices up until 2017 in Dublin and in Limerick and in the UK, in Maidenhead, and we took all of our people out of these offices and now they're working fully remotely. We also implemented a no-visit rule. That was quite a big step for us. We actually implemented in September of 2017 a no-visit rule, where we actually, from that moment on, have never visited a client, and they have never visited us. All of our work has been done through Microsoft Teams. In fact, Microsoft Teams is just over 3 years old now. It was in April of 2017 when Microsoft launched the product. We're now actually in 4 countries, across 3 continents, and it's because we've become remote working and we were fully enabled with Teams that we were able to expand beyond the shores of Ireland, and we now have global clients such as Mars, which would be based in pretty much every country in the world. Also have about 550 offices. So a no-visit rule actually really helped us become obviously remote working, but also secure. So what am I going to cover today? We're going to talk about the what and why of Teams, right? And in context of that, we'll be talking about team communication, knowledge sharing, and task management. And these are the 3 pillars of remote working. So a lot of people think remote working is working on your laptop at home and on a lot of meetings. But reality is remote working is a new way of performing, a new way of actually collaborating. And these are the 3 pillars that Microsoft Teams delivers. And in context of what we're doing today, because it's a skill net, we'll be giving you a lot of tips. We'll actually have a short quiz, and we'll also have a special offer as well, so that you can actually see how to help your company be more secure. So for those who haven't heard of Teams, and I imagine very few of you at this stage hadn't heard of Teams, we're actually on a Teams meeting at the moment. Every Office 365 license. So if you have Office 365, you have Teams. And what Microsoft like to refer to as a hub for teamwork. And it is essentially a collaboration platform. It's a very important point to make. It's more than just a Zoom call equivalent, which maybe a lot of you have experienced. It's a full collaboration platform. And it allows you to do chats, meetings, calls, in fact, even breaking out into phone calls to mobiles and landlines. Its ability to file share and co-author is really one of the key pillars of Microsoft Teams. But then you look at the platform, it can host a whole number of apps and workflows. It's a very important point to make. Workflows, you can now automate some of your teamwork in Teams. So what's the benefits of that? Well, it gives team transparency, right? So everyone can see what's going on. It's not just email anymore, where maybe you weren't included in a distribution. You're obviously going to be in sync. Everyone can see the same data at the same time, and obviously keeping tracking of what you're doing. So task management, as I mentioned earlier. It streamlines, obviously, the work that you're doing. That's very important. This is what productivity is all about, right? Streamlining how your people are working together. But also centralizing files and maintaining version control. This is a real problem when you're collaborating by email and you're sending an attachment to multiple people. What you've done is created multiple versions of that document. But by sharing the file within Teams, you are now creating a master document which can be controlled and worked on together. But what's most important is it enables teamwork anywhere, anytime with online access. And obviously, for us, it's important to have purpose when you're looking at Teams. And I'll talk about that later, the importance of understanding the purpose of what you're doing with Teams, the attributes that you can actually enable. Again, you switch on what you need, not just because it's there. Make sure the team has what it needs rather than overloading it with every possible feature and app. We also need to recognize the challenges of changing from the old way of working, which is obviously email, phone, face-to-face, to now a situation where we now need to look at how people can adopt Teams and change the way they're working, change their behavior. Very important to recognize that. It's not the same. So you need to understand how to train. That's why we partnered with Priority Management, who will be talking later, but also understanding the security requirements. This is where, for us, the most important thing that you need to look at is the security of what you're doing, especially when you're collaborating externally. So what is the business value? Again, a lot of people are using Teams for meetings, and that's great. It's a great tool for that purpose. But what we want to show today is it's more than that. And of course, there's a number of studies about the business value of Teams and the amount of productivity savings that can achieve. And this was a study done by Forrester on 260 customers, which basically helps quantify what you could be looking at to achieve, including less meetings. This is one thing I've noticed, we spoke about with a number of people, including Alan, that since COVID, people are on more meetings. And what you should be thinking about is having more efficient use of your time by using Teams correctly, having less time on meetings. So it's all about productivity for us. If it doesn't improve productivity, there's the business value of Teams is not enabled. So, but why is Teams so important? Because even before COVID, the landscape had changed. We are now 80% more time spent on collaboration. I imagine everyone here today, before COVID, is seeing that. And we're doing that with both internally and externally. And obviously, remote working is something that's been around for years. In fact, I'll be talking about Grow Remote later on, which is an initiative helping people to connect and understand what remote working is about. Then we also have a diverse workforce, more skill sets, abilities, different people, and that can now be attained through remote working. So you can now no longer have to worry about who's in your 50-kilometer radius of your building. You can now take on people anywhere that will obviously provide the skills and abilities that you need. And of course, finally, the employee engagement. Getting people to engage Teams makes them more connected to what you're doing. They're more aware of what's going on, but also they can contribute more through Teams. And team structures have changed. It's very interesting. This is what we had before, which is very hierarchical, departmental type teams with very few changes going on. Everyone typically in the same department. Where we now see today in the construction sector would be very, very kind of a good example of this, where we now see frequent changes of teams, increased collaboration with external partners and contractors in your case, and also members from cross-functional teams coming together. And this is where we have a number of team types, and I'll just quickly go through a few of them. One is functional teams that we all know. Obviously, this is very typical departmental, working on projects. But then we now have cross-functional teams, where people from different departments working on the same project. We then have the matrix teams, and these are often called two-boss teams, where you actually have two line managers that you are reporting to for obviously for different projects. And what we also have is operational teams, and that's very much part of what we do here in IT. IT is an operational team supporting other teams, and that also needs to be recognized within the new structure. And of course, very much in the construction space is the contract team, where you're outsourcing actually some or total projects to other organizations outside of your own, and where you're in a supervisory role for that project. It's also what we've seen with these new virtual teams is an increase in technology. I imagine a lot of you have seen all kinds of different technologies, Slack, Google, Facebook for business. They're all coming out with different collaboration solutions. But what we found is for remote working teams, Microsoft Teams obviously is a single hub for teamwork. In fact, if you use Teams correctly, you should never have to leave Teams to do all of your work within Teams. So the good news as well for remote working, that Teams can work across multiple platforms. Any device, anywhere is what Microsoft states. And this is actually quite true, because no matter what device, no matter what OS you have, this can support Teams. Now, there is obviously some older versions of Office doesn't, like 2007. If you're on 2007, it doesn't support Teams, but 2010 and above does. We also want to recognize as well that Microsoft Teams is a portal. It's not an application, such as, I'm again using Zoom as an example. Zoom is a spot solution, does what it does. Microsoft Teams is a portal into other workloads in your Office 365. It's very interesting, isn't it, that now SharePoint, your calendar, your planner, all your data is all available through Teams. However, Teams does not hold on to that data. That file that you're storing in Teams is actually stored outside of Teams. So it's sitting on top of SharePoint and OneDrive for business. So it enables all the capabilities of these workloads, and also allows you to do, obviously, rather than replicating your SharePoint, you can now have SharePoint in Teams. You can also enable security features, because secure collaboration is not switched on by default. And that's very important to note. Teams obviously has the capability, but you need to configure it. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But for the three pillars of remote working, team communication is kind of the starting point, where everyone starts their experience with Teams. So that's meetings, chats, channels, and now this new term, posts. You might have seen that recently with a change in terminology that Microsoft made earlier this year. So a meeting is like this. And the first tip that we want to give you is that, and this is something, of course, I've been using Teams for 3 years, so it becomes nearly second nature. It was only where someone pointed out to me that, this little bar, this control bar as it's called, the one that's highlighted in blue here, only comes available when you move your cursor, because it can hide sometimes. So I'm telling people to share their screen, and of course have to realize that they had to move their cursor. But once you do that, you can switch on a whole kinds of functionality within the team. You can share your screen, you can hide your video, you can mute. Now, there's a new feature today that's only switched on in the last few days, which is raise your hand. So today in this meeting, you can actually raise your hand. You might see a new icon appear in your control panel or in your control box, command box here. You can also do other things like just record the call, like this call is being recorded, so you can listen back on it. You can also enter and create custom backgrounds, so you can actually block out your background, which is a very important in the remote working in context, where some people obviously maybe working from home, and therefore having a custom background obviously helps when they're sharing their video. So that's the tip there. The next one is about chats. So that tip, I've actually got 3 tips on this. One is the fact that, first of all, chats are a great way of having a conversation, but you should try and do it within a team channel if that is relating to that team. Otherwise, that data, that information won't be stored in that team. So that's what's called one-to-one or peer-to-peer chats. Right, so it's great. It's important to do that, have that facility. But if it's relating to the team, go into the team first, open the channel, and then have your chat. Then you can also have group chats, right? Group chats. Now, people think, oh, what's a group chat? This allows you to have obviously a group of people talking and sharing documents and having other collaboration without the need for teams. And I'll talk about team sprawl later on in this presentation. Team sprawl is a real problem. Too many teams, right, is not a good practice, because basically all your information gets disseminated and potentially lost in different channels. You should have one channel, one team for one purpose. And
Sean,
then the final.
okay with 5 minutes, Sean. 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Fine. So the final thing then is to say that we also have a feature where you want to use you want to save a chat, right? You can actually save a chat within your team, and that allows you to use that for purposes of going back in maybe during an employee review, and so you can actually see what's going on and say, oh yes, I remember you contributed something positively to the team, and so these messages can be saved. Okay, so the next thing is channel posts. This is where, again, using the channel is like a room within a house. So if you use channels, make sure to have them completed, and structured for your team. If you have too many channels, that again is bad practice. Each channel should have a purpose, and therefore everyone knows what's being said, why it's being said in that channel. And of course, that tip basically is making sure the right conversations are happening in the right places. So I will do a quick recap then. We have a meeting where we have an ad hoc meeting where you have one-to-one and group chats. You can also have standalone meetings, and you can also have channel meetings where everyone in that channel is invited to that meeting. A great place to keep your collaboration in one place. And now, as I say, I do have a quick quiz here. So one scenario here is if you have five members in a team, you have a different time zones working on 2 deliverables, and you have to have it completed in 2 months. But even if that does not require a team, it only can be done through a group-based chat. So one thing you can learn from today is that not every situation requires a team. Now, I know I'm looking at time, so I'm just going to continue through here for a moment and just finish off with, I was going to finish off with the thing I mentioned earlier, which is the team sprawl. Team sprawl is something, again, if one thing you can remember from this, from my presentation, is that don't allow everyone in the organization to create teams. There should be a centralized committee deciding on that, because teamwork is part of your business and you should control that rather than letting things off. Another thing you should avoid is being a guest on someone else's team if you were the leader of that project, right? I imagine a few of you are thinking, oh, maybe I am a guest, and I shouldn't be. If you are the lead, you should be hosting the team and inviting people to guests. And this is what's happened during COVID. A lot of people have been scrambling to get onto teams and say, well, I don't really understand teams. You host a team and I'll be a guest. What happens is that person can switch you off at any moment and all that data will be lost. So another thing you can do, a lot of people have problems with their audio. You can actually do a test call before any meeting starts. Very nice thing, because some people are obviously not using headsets like I'm doing today. It's a great little thing in your command box to put in /test call. And then there is actually Microsoft Teams enabled devices out there. And what we've found over the years is having a certified headset really does help. It means every time you're on a call, your audio works. And again, as I said earlier, be deliberate when you're building a team. Don't think about obviously having too many teams, right? There's no prize for having the most teams. What you should have is small, growing teams, but make sure they're secure before you deploy. And I'll just finish with the point here. Sorry, I know my time is up. So Microsoft now have a number of features in Azure, where Microsoft Office 365 sits to enable security. Now, the security is not enabled in Teams; it's enabled in Azure. That's the hidden trick here. Your identity management, threat protection, information protection, governance, compliance is all there, achievable within Teams. So my final tip for the day is make sure when you deploy Teams that your devices are being managed. Because remember, Teams is a portal into your whole organization, all of your data. Make sure your information is protected. So only those who can see or are meant to see that information can see it. And that's achievable within Teams. And then finally, identity management, making sure that you can't get hacked using MFA and conditional access to make sure that someone cannot hack into your Teams and obviously then obtain all that information. So make remote workers your secret weapon. Grow Remote, I mentioned earlier, is a great initiative in Ireland. You can check it out there. It talks about what it means to be a remote worker. And this is something that was now available to everybody. And then finally, I'm just going to give you the offer. This is available to, it's called a Secure Remote Work Workshop. And it's really good. It's an 8-hour session, typically broken into 4 2-hour online meetings with teams. And it actually, for some obviously eligible enterprises, that's actually fully funded by Microsoft. And you can actually contact me today if you wish, and I can check your eligibility for you. So thank you very much. And I'm passing it back to Alan. I know I've over my time.
No, that's fine. We're just about 1 or 2 minutes. So that's fine. Sean, thank you so much. very insightful. So I guess to summarize, Microsoft Teams is a hub for teamwork, but it's also should allow more efficient use of time. I think that's the bit that maybe people are struggling with. I know on a personal basis, I'm certainly having more meetings, and if I was to share my Teams calendar with all my other school executive members, there wouldn't be a minute left in each day of each working day. So we're kind of, I suppose, struggling with that little bit. There's some questions coming in, but maybe I'll take those at the end. So
Okay.
Thank you, Sean. And I learned an awful lot from that, and I have a number of questions for you a little later. So
Thank you.
thank you. So our second speaker is John Kerrigan. John's a great supporter of CitA over the years. John is county manager for Leica Geosystems. And John's just going to give us a 5 or so minutes just on his own insight into using Teams meetings in the company. So John, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks a million, Alan. Yeah, can everyone hear me there?
Yeah, you're good to
Perfect. Good stuff. Yeah, so thanks a million for the opportunity for speaking here. So yeah, my name is John Kerrigan.
We just lost your sound, John. Did you want to just talk again?
Go. I don't know why.
You're back on. Okay.
Perfect.
So Vinny, your video there, Vinny. Love the hat.
Nice hat, Vinny. Nice hair too.
Okay. So
basically, yeah, my role is as country manager for Leica Geosystems, so responsible for bringing in sort of all the equipment into Ireland through to our distribution channel and to our end users. So like the likes of laser scanning, total stations, GPS. My role also means I have to work very closely with the factory. And with that, I'm always on calls with them. And in the past would have been using obviously a phone to ringing them directly. But we found that using Teams now has been an absolute godsend for that interaction with the factory. And again, being able to set up channels with different divisions in the factory so that we can collaborate on projects for different solutions that we're going to bring out into the marketplace. And we very, very heavily using Teams for that. So Teams has been a godsend. I've been pretty much at home since the start of March. So I can say if it wasn't for Teams, it would have been a very, very different workplace for me. We've been using Teams extensively for the last few months. And with us in work now, I can't remember speaking to any of my colleagues on the phone anymore. We use Teams day in, day out now for all our conversations. So I have it on all the time. Teams is always on. When I look up, I can see by the color if a colleague of mine, there's a little circle at the bottom of their image. I can see if they're available to speak. I can ring them straight away and get in contact with them. And it's fantastic because then when I'm speaking to colleagues, sometimes you're trying to explain the project you're working on or explain what you're trying to do. So very quickly to be able to share your screen and to interact with your colleagues is fantastic. So we find that really, really good. And again, as I say, not ringing colleagues on my phone anymore because I'm at my desk so much now, but really using Teams as that interaction between colleagues. When I'm setting up meetings as well, I really like the fact that you can just, before the meeting happens, I put lots of notes in the meeting. So before anyone comes on, they can go through, they can look at the meeting notes, they understand what's going to happen in the meeting, they understand what I want to get out of the meeting, they can contribute to the notes as well. So it makes for that meeting, we're talking about using our times effectively. They can go in, they can understand what's going to be there and what needs to be delivered out of this meeting. So I find using the notes in the meetings very, very useful. As well as that, we set up like in the channels to say if we're collaborating between a team of people, if we're collaborating, we have a wiki. So in that wiki, we're able to put up information that needs to be used by everyone in the team, or say if there was a data for like scanning data. I know people are on here are understand what point cloud and scanning data is. We can put some of that information up there so people can drag that down out of the wiki, or training documents out of the wiki. So we use that quite effectively as well. And we're also using it for doing one-to-one training with customers. So in the past, my job would have been traveling around the country, visiting customers, showing them our equipment, our solutions, our hardware, but also our software. Now, that's going to have to be reviewed. I don't think we're going to be able to do that to the same extent in the future. But I believe using Teams, we can actually do a lot of that, especially for software. Any software can be done over Teams. But I'm coming up, and it's a task that I've been asked to do in the company, to come up with ways of actually doing hardware demonstrations. Maybe it's a case of sending the equipment to the customer and actually then using Teams to talk to the customer and bring them through how to use the equipment. And we're also using it for social events and work. So every Friday evening at 4:30, all the sales teams comes on, and it's a case of you're not allowed to speak about work. It's only a social event. So we talk about everything else. We have a bit of a quiz, and we find that it's very good. It means at the end of the week, we're able to just relax, get our head into the weekend. So again, it's not all about work. It can be used for social purposes. And the backgrounds, I think people talked about the backgrounds. I have a hexagon, like a Geosystems background here, but I do have lots of other backgrounds that we use, and especially when we're on those social events, to bring a smile to people's faces.
Yeah, we've seen them, John. Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked, and I like this idea that Sean's talking about, that no visit rule. It's something that I will be bringing into the organization. I'd like to find out more about how your customers maybe thought of that, Sean. But I think that's something that we're all going to have to get involved with going forward. I think customers, there's going to be maybe a reluctance of more people interacting and stuff with the situation that we're in now. So I really want to delve into that. But again, the tips I would have is having a good mic and a speaker setup. Now, I have a Jabra as the system I have here. I think Sean talked about other ones, but I think it's very important when you're having Teams that your mic system is set up, it's well tested, there's good lighting in the room that you're in, and that your sitting position is good, and that you're looking at the screen. I probably haven't been good at doing that on this, but looking at the camera and trying to engage with the people you're speaking to. And yeah, what would I like to see maybe come out of Teams in the future? Well, could we have a child filter? I'm working from home now, and what we have is I have screaming kids running into my office all the time. I don't know if Teams can do anything with that, or Microsoft can do anything with that. But yeah, yesterday I got an awful fright. I had my 5-year-old come in. He was able to sneak in. He was able to come up beside me and blow into my ear without me even realizing, and frighten the living Jesus out of me. So yeah, I don't know if we can do something like that. But yeah, that's my experiences so far. I have to say it's very, very positive from my point of view. With the new 9 screens, being able to see 9 people on the screens has been a big improvement the last week as well. I see the hands up as a new improvement, so it seems to be growing in strength to strength. So yeah, that's from me, Alan.
Thanks, John. That's great. Great insight into everything. Tip is to have your meetings early in the morning when the kids are asleep. My teenagers don't get up till about 1 o'clock anyway. So, listen, great. I guess there'll be a number of questions for you later on. So, John, thank you. We'll be back to you. So, Dermot, you're with us. Dermot Rice.
How you doing?
Hiya, Dermot. Thanks for joining us this morning. Dermot is the Managing Director of Priority Management Training, and his title is Boosting Productivity with MS Teams Priority Management Training Approach. Just to remind you all, you're with the CitA Tech Live 2020 series this morning. I'm your host, Alan Hoare from TU Dublin.
How you doing? Thanks very much, Alan. Great to be here.
Yeah.
What we're going to do, Sean went through some of the great things that Microsoft Teams can do, and it's excellent. I mean, there's loads of functionality. In actual fact, there's so much functionality, people are getting bamboozled about what it can do. And we want to try and look at ways that you can actually implement the techniques, make use of the functionality as best you can. So, priority management. We're an international training organization. We've over 55 offices around the world, and we've been going for over 40 years. And our focus has been on personal and team productivity. So how we help people get more things done as easy as possible. So Sean and John have talked about the whole fact that we've been thrown into this new way of working in the last 2 months or so. And what we found with our clients is that initially when this happened, everybody was scrambling to get their staff the capability to work from home. So connectivity, making sure they had laptops that could work, how to link in with their systems in the office to be able to do the work they were doing in the office back in the house. So you might expect now after 8 weeks, that's probably in place now at the minute. Excuse me. What we've been asked now is looking at, okay, how, if you're working at home now, how do you increase your own productivity or get the work done at the same rate now that you are working from home? So how do you use the application you have to make life easier? And the next thing that's we're talking about is working together or working effectively with others. And that's where Microsoft Teams comes into play. So we've seen from what Sean said, it is very powerful. You can do loads of things, but how are you going to maximize that benefit? So just two things of productivity you've probably seen before. Working longer hours or working longer means you get more things done. That's not actually the fact. Working longer hours makes you less productive. And multitasking, can you get two things done at once? You can't. So they're just two of the myths of productivity that we look at or are aware of. So for today, what is Microsoft Teams? Sean's done a lot of work on talking what Teams is. So we want to see how can we make Teams more productive? How can you take what Sean says and put it into place or practice in your offices? And then what are the benefits, or why are these benefits not being achieved? If it is so powerful and so good, why aren't there all these organizations benefiting from Microsoft Teams? So Sean said that we have about a fourfold increase in use of Teams, and that should lead to a decrease in email traffic. We're finding from our clients that email has actually increased as well, meetings has increased, and the use of Teams has increased, which means something is not working. So basically, what is Teams? Just straight from Wikipedia, and again, as Sean is saying, it's a unified communication and collaboration platform that combines persistent workspace chat, meetings, and storage. And the last two lines, application integration. So basically, it's a one-stop shop for all the information you have in relation to how you run your teams or your business. So everything can be there if it's used correctly. So basically, it's a portal, as Sean said. Sorry.
Hello. Okay, we're back. Yeah.
Is it gone?
No, you're okay.
Okay.
You're good to go.
Ugh. Sorry about this.
Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you. Yeah, it's just going to a. Can you see it now?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're okay to go.
So basically, it's a portal, as Sean said. So all your information can be put up in one place. It's focused in that you can have a team in relation to a project or a product you're working on, or a department or an area. So it is focused. So all the information in relation to one area can be in one place. So it's very, very focused. And it's a pull system insofar as that the information can be achieved or can be addressed or found out when the individual wants to find the information, as opposed to a push system. Like an email system is a push system. For example, when you're ever sitting at your desk and an email arrives in and you said, right, that's great, that email is there. Most times emails arrive in when the sender wants to send it, not when you want to receive it. As opposed to a pull system, you can access the information when you want to access it. And it's very, very efficient if it's done in that way. So our most popular program to date, or up to January this year, is personal productivity. So how individuals get more work done, how they manage their own workloads, manage their own time, and work on the key objectives they have to achieve. So it's called Working Smarter Outlook. So we went into organizations and said, if we can help an individual get more work done in a day, keep the inbox empty, know what they have to deliver, what time do you have available to do things or not do things, and save on average 5 hours per person per week. They were all very, very interested. And what we did is we looked at processes and techniques, but linked them into the technology. Microsoft Outlook has so much functionality that people don't know about, and we could link it in. Where our key approach was focusing on changing behaviors of the individual. Again, as Sean said, you need people to do things differently. So that's why it was so successful. So keeping that changing behavior in mind when you're looking at your own MS Teams deployment. So our approach to Microsoft Teams training, we look at what the business goals are, what do you have to achieve, what processes you have in place to achieve those goals, and how the technology can support you. So again, how can Microsoft Teams support the processes you have to achieve your goals. So you may not use all of the technology, you may not use all the functionality, but you choose what you want to use to make sure the processes can be implemented. So as I said, a lot of people have started using Teams over the last while, and we do surveys before we do our training classes, and we ask people, how are they getting on? Excuse me. So we see a lot of the areas that people are struggling in is information overload, when to use Teams or email, the conflict, overwhelmed with Teams notifications. So now instead of having one inbox, you've got all these multiple team channels, as Sean was talking about, team spread. So you've got these notifications, you've got email traffic, inbox overload. So it can be very overwhelming. So all these areas people are challenged with, are struggling with. So you want to see how can we get training in such a way that we can attack these issues, solve them, and make life easier for individuals, for groups, and for organizations. So the Microsoft 365, Sean was talking about earlier. So especially the collaboration platforms, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft OneNote, Microsoft SharePoint, they're all great collaboration tools. But if they're not rolled out in a certain way, they can actually add to your workload. Alan was talking about earlier on about extra meetings they're involved in. So if it's not used in a certain way, it can actually duplicate your work rather than making it more simple. So we look at how we can streamline these to work together. So Sean was talking earlier about Teams. So we see Microsoft Teams as the hub. And all these extra applications can feed into the hub. So regardless of what you're using, even if you have Microsoft Teams, you still have to manage your day and manage your workload. So we still see Microsoft Outlook as your daily planning tool. SharePoint has still got files that you're probably using, and you can pull them into Microsoft Teams. You don't have to recreate the wheel. Microsoft OneNote is a great information management tool. And again, that can be pulled into Microsoft Teams. And then the whole trick is, how do you get all these pieces of the jigsaw working together? So another thing is called Microsoft Planner for shared tasks and activities. So how do you manage the tasks across the team? How do you track what's being done, who's doing it? So the whole point is getting this whole jigsaw to work together in a collaborative way to make life easier. And again, as I say, not to duplicate on the work. So you don't do some work in Microsoft Teams, then you go back and do the same work in Microsoft Outlook, then you do this work in information management in Microsoft OneNote. So how the whole lot pulls together in a lean process or lean way. So if Teams is deployed effectively, there are some huge benefits. And Sean talked about earlier on, it can actually reduce the internal email traffic. So we had a client 2 weeks ago that they implemented the Microsoft Teams, and they were able to eliminate email traffic for a particular product launch, which was very, very good. So you can reduce internal email traffic if it's done the right way. You can reduce the time spent in meetings and the number of meetings. And again, it has to be done in a certain way to enable you to achieve those benefits. But you can get to the stage where the number of meetings is reduced and the time of meetings is reduced. So it has huge benefits if it's done the right way. It can increase collaboration across the team. So how you access information, how you share documents, how you update documents live. So it can do all that for you as well. And it can increase the productive time of the individual and the team. So there are huge benefits if it's done the right way. So what should deliver? As I won't through all of these, but the certain ones we talked about is data centralization by topic. So it's easy to find information and it can be pulled down and be visible by all. Chatting can be introduced, so email can be eliminated. But a big part, as John was talking about down the end there, working anywhere or anytime from anywhere. So the mobile applications are really, really powerful. So how do you get this done? So any MS Teams training we look at, as opposed to looking at online training videos, which are very good, and we've used them ourselves. If you want to take the system to where the business is taking a step shift forward, you look at not only looking at the functionality of Teams and how you train people to use the functionality, you're looking at processes that you want to migrate to an MS Teams environment. Excuse me, short of breath here. So we go through the training program, but also we focus on 3 or 4 processes that you're going to look at in your business today that you're going to migrate across. So the training needs to look at group training. If people are going to work together and use this technology together, they need to be trained together so they all can use it in the same way. So it's very, very straightforward. We go through the techniques so everybody's taking a step forward at the same time. We also need to agree a scope or the processes that you're going to use within the training environment. So what's going to move across? What processes are you going to take from email or Excel spreadsheets and migrate to Microsoft Team environment? They have to be clear up front so you know what they're going to be. And then as Sean was talking about earlier on, guidelines of behavior. What rules are you going to put in place? What code of conduct? Who's going to set up a team? Who has the authority to set up a team? Are you going to use emails? Are you going to use Microsoft Teams or chats? What communications are you going to use? But you need to agree the guidelines so people know how they're going to use it. And then you need to look at deployment process review. So having looked at the processes that you have migrated, 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, you need to go back and see if it has worked, what issues are there, why it didn't work, or how you can improve in that process.
Dermot, are you okay with 5 minutes or less?
Yeah, I've only 2 or 3 left.
Okay.
So again, as I mentioned, in the individual training approach for the team's training approach, the focus is on changing behavior. How do you get people to do something different after training intervention that makes life easier for them and for the organization? So that's what my focus is on, to make sure you can use the technology to make life easier. In actual fact, Microsoft themselves have asked us to help them with Microsoft Teams training. So the Microsoft Corporate External and Legal Affairs Division globally have been working with us to roll out the training. So it's a good approach that works very well for loads of organizations.
Thanks, Dermot.
Right. So the last thing is CITA are providing funding for the courses. So if you're looking at Teams training or individual training, just give us a shout and we can tell you what the program is, how it's broken down, and what the results have been to date. So that's
Thanks,
it.
Dermot. That's excellent. Training is going to be so important as we go forward, I suppose.
Yep.
One thing just before we come on to our next speaker is sort of from a TU Dublin perspective, what we find works in our school would be that we have kind of, you could say, formal meetings at the top of the week and then informal meetings, during the week where you might catch up, but there's no formal recording of action. So it's more like having a cup of coffee or whatever it is. So it's that kind of regular contact, but at some point during the week there is a formality to the meeting, So listen, that's really, Dermot, thank you so much. And as I say, you mentioned CitA SkillNet there, that's supporting, even TU Dublin programs and other initiatives. So please avail of that discount if you want to avail of that training. So our next speaker is Ralph Montague. So Ralph, you with us? So Ralph is, thank you, Dermot, again. Ralph is one of the great supporters of CitA, a real, enthusiast when it comes to digital construction. And so Ralph is the director of ArcDocs, many of you know. He's going to talk about training online with MSC Teams. So Ralph, good morning.
Hi, Alan. How are you doing? And hi, everybody. Thanks very much for having me. I'm a director at ArcDocs, and for those of you who don't know, ArcDocs are a BIM consultancy practice, and for the past 11 years, we've been helping companies and projects and individuals to embrace digital construction, and in particular, building information modeling. And we've been using Teams internally as a business for a couple of years. We have sort of 4 functions within our business. We have a consultancy role where we help clients and project teams to implement the BIM process. So we help them with their BIM execution plans and their EIRs, etc. And just help people work through the process. We also have a small production division, so where people have resource problems, we help them produce BIM models, and we have a training function, so we train people to use various software. We focus on the Autodesk, mainly on the Autodesk software, so Navisworks, Revit, BIM 360, Dynamo, and but we also do training in things like Kobe and just in general the use of the ISO 19650 standards. And then we have a support function where people buy an amount of time from us, and they allow their staff to use that time to contact our technical resources as they're working through projects, and to help them through any issues there. So we've used Teams in that capacity for remote support, and internally we've used Teams as a way to share information amongst the staff in those functions, so that there's one place staff can go and see relevant reference documents or templates or anything like that. We've found that staff are also using it to share tips and tricks on how they are working together, or if they find an interesting piece of information, they put it into the team and share it through that, so it's always available to people. When this crisis came along 2 months ago, we were thinking, what could we do as a business to help the industry, and we decided to put together a 10-hour program to share some of our knowledge that we've gained over the last 11 years with industry. And so we called it the BIM Coordinators Mentoring Program, and it was structured as 10 hours. It was a 1 hour a day meeting over 10 days where we would share some of our knowledge with people. And it was geared towards people who wanted to pursue their career or their business in digital construction. So, we see a trend that's happening, and towards digitalization of the construction industry, but that trend has suddenly been enormously accelerated by the situation we found ourselves in. So we put this program together and we offered it for free, and people signed up to the program, and then we used Microsoft Teams to go through the 10 meetings. Okay, we had a fantastic response to it. But we weren't sure how many people would be interested in this, but it turned out we had 250 people sign up for the first program, and we subsequently run it another 2 times. So we've already had 750 people go through this program, and we have another 250 people lined up for another program coming up. So the program was structured into 10 days. So as I said, an hour a day. The first day looked at why you should consider digital construction for your career and your business. We looked specifically there on day 2 what people need to know about. Day 3 we looked at how BIM managers and BIM coordinators would carry out their role under the ISO 19650 standard and the tools available to them. On day 4, we looked at how people could interact with graphical data or 3D models without having access to expensive design software, so using some free tools to review and interrogate and navigate the models. Day 5, we looked at specifically the structured non-graphical data and the importance of the way you gather and present data in a structured format. Day 6, we looked at all the documentation that had to be gathered as part of a project. Day 7, we looked at the common data environment in more detail and how that worked. Day 8, we looked at the model, just a brief overview of model authoring. So this wasn't a software training program, it was just sort of an information sharing program, but we demonstrated some of the software tools available. And day 9, we looked at model coordination and clash detection, and then we ended off with some final thoughts and next steps for people, how to pursue your career or your business in digital construction. So we found the Teams environment really useful. We have this sort of post area where people could post discussions and chats and ask questions, and we would answer those questions just to kind of help them through the journey. We had a files section where we could share important files and reference documents and some tools that we've developed to help people through the process. We used the wiki, which is what we're looking at here. It's like it's almost like a quick website, basically. We could structure the training for the different days into pages and with links, and people could sort of navigate through that, like you would through a website. So if I want to jump to day 7, you just click on that link, and then it opens up day 7, and there's all the information. So it was a great resource. You can add apps to the team. There's a number of apps you can add. You can add Microsoft apps, but also there's a whole load of other apps you can add. Now, we didn't add a lot to this, but for instance, we could add a Google survey to that, and all the meetings that we had were recorded, and we made those available through Microsoft Streams, which is kind of like YouTube, but it has the videos have great functionality. It has an automatic transcript and text, and so those are all available to people. So it was really useful way to collaborate with people and large numbers of people. So as I said, 250 people at a time. Microsoft Teams has also allowed us. ArcDocs are training providers under the CitA SkillNet for BIM training, and allowed us to take all that training online. So people didn't have to stop having training. Some of the challenges we found with Teams, one was adding large numbers of people. You've got to add people to the team one by one, and it's just, if you're adding 250 people, that takes a little bit of time. It would be nice if there was a way to add large numbers of people to a team in one go. The other challenge we found with the wiki, which was all the notes we had, there's no way in Teams to print or export the wiki, so it was a manual process. But what we've done for people is we've created a version of that information as a Word document, and they could then download and print that if they wanted. Also, we found Microsoft, to join a Microsoft team, you have to have an email account that's associated with Microsoft, either as an Office or personal Office 365 email, or Hotmail or Outlook email. So people who signed up for the course with a Gmail address or an iCloud address had problems getting onto the team, and it took a bit of time back and forth to get them sorted out. That you can create a free Microsoft account, but you've got to do that. Another challenge we found is with people using different versions of Teams. So always check that you have the latest update. If you click on your profile and check for updates, make sure everybody's using the same version. Otherwise, sometimes they can't switch to the ArcDocs Hub, which is what we're using for this program, if they're using Teams on a different hub for a company. So I hope that's enough, Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. Great uptake. Just remind me again, is the course still running, or I didn't see the dates there. Is it still available, or?
Yeah, we're running another course starting on the 8th. Sorry, the 8th of June for 10 days.
And can people jump in sort of midpoint or towards the end, or they need to have to do the whole thing to get the whole story?
Well, we want people to sign up for the course. They don't have to attend all the meetings. Obviously, it's nicer if you attend the meeting, because then you can ask questions and participate. But the meetings are recorded, so if people don't have the time, they can have access to the recordings. So if people want to contact me, and I'll direct them to a registration link.
Okay.
So Ralph@arcdocs.com.
Thanks, Ralph, and you're spot on the time, so much appreciated. I'm sure there'll be maybe a question or two at the end, so thanks for taking the time. So our next speaker is Conor Deegan. Conor, you're very welcome.
Hi, thanks, Alan.
Ready to go. So Connor is the Chief Operating Officer for Teams Assist, and Connor's going to be talking about artificial intelligence startup assisting the adoption of Microsoft Teams for improved teamwork productivity. So,
quite a mouthful.
So you might take us through.
Sure. Yeah. And first of all, thanks to Ralph there. I mean, I think he gave a great, a good overview, but pros and cons, and he showed how, they're using Teams pretty effectively. With OneNote there, a very comprehensive document there, so thanks for that. Let me just share my screen. And we can kick things off. 1 second.
I can see your screen, thank you. So just to remind everyone, you're this morning, welcome to the CitA Tech Trend 2020 series. I'm your host this morning, Alan Hoare from TU Dublin. So,
Alan, can you see my screen now? Can you see?
Yes, I can.
Just the presentation, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great, thanks. So I suppose to start with as well, John was mentioning about a filter for kids and Teams. I love that as well. Kids running in and out every day, and that's why these virtual backgrounds are quite good, right? So anyway, to kick things off, guys, delighted to be here. My name is Connor Deegan. I'm COO of Teams Assist, and I'm here today delighted to be here today to help speaking about how our company is assisting business to the future of work. Okay, we do this by assisting behavioral change, and you'll hear me talking about this throughout the course of the presentation. And we're currently primarily focused on helping business and companies adopt Microsoft Teams for increased teamwork productivity. Okay, so the future of work. You've heard everyone pretty much today speak about the future of work and where we're at. What is it? I mean, you could say it's primarily led by artificial intelligence, but it's also about connected, online and distributed teams where your ability to collaborate actually both internally and externally with customers, with partners, with anyone you're operating with, that's going to be the game changer. All right, and you can see from the past 2 months, the future of work doesn't necessarily have an office. Right, you hear these terms, remote first or location less, and that's because prior to COVID, the future of work was heading towards remote working. Before all this thing kicked off, right, and now it's crashing into our lives. What it isn't, and just to be clear, remote working, it's not working from home in all right.
Can we just people turn off their mics there? Are you okay, Connor?
Yeah, I'm fine. You see, what I was going to say is remote working isn't working from home in a crisis, right? I've worked from home probably 3-4 years, and you go through phases of it, right? There's, the first few months it's new and it's exciting, and then it peters out, and you have to get used to working. It's actually what now Microsoft are calling remote teaming. It's a new term that's coined for it. So, that change to remote in itself, I said, Teams Assist is about assisting behavioral change. That in itself is a huge mindset change for business owners, companies. Think about someone who spent 30 years building up a business based on a single office in a big city. And now they're telling people, go home, stay at home. That in itself is a huge behavioral change, right? And of course, there's pros, there's cons. I worked on a global team previously that were all remote, and I can tell you, for one, staff retention we didn't lose anybody. Okay, now on the flip side, you got to think about that culture. It is a culture change as well. So to getting to work remote, you got to understand what goes with that, let alone the shadow IT and the security potential issues of working from home. So who are we, right? Teams Assist. So our management team is up there, myself, Sean, Susan and John. So 2 of the guys on the left, they led a high potential startup with 10 employees to over €1 million in revenue. I myself, I've recently come on board. I used to work with PayPal in Dublin for a long time. in the last 4 years, probably remotely. And John, our CTO, he's who we like to call Mr. Data. He in a previous life was a lecturer in UL on data architecture. He's the man behind the AI we use, right? And our company, it's a spin out of our sister company, Cloud Assist. And we qualified last year as a Microsoft for Startup AI company. We've got over $120,000 in funding to ultimately bring our product and our strategy to market. All right, and we're talking about Microsoft Teams. Everyone's talked about Teams. Why focus on Teams? Because Teams, Microsoft is the biggest data collection of productivity on the planet, right? So there's a minefield out there. And they want Teams to be the number one collaboration platform. So you might say, well, what's the challenge then, right? The challenge is, so our old friend here, Superman, right? So like Superman, Microsoft Teams, I guess you could say, has its own kryptonite, right? It has work and it has always of methodology that would strip the power from it. All right, and the number one issue for Microsoft Teams is email. And Dermot hinted at it. Everyone has hinted at it, increased email. You think back a few years ago, a lot of new collaboration platforms came on the market, the likes of Slack, and the general consensus was that within 5-6 years, email would significantly be reduced. Whereas the opposite is actually true. We're seeing probably a 30% increase in email year over year. So why is that? Why do we do that? And the reason we do that is because it's a habit. We're all used to email over time. So the first thing we'll turn to in uncertainty is email, right? And it's actually what psychologists describe as user dysfunctional behavior. Okay, user dysfunctional behavior. We're going to email because it's a habit, and as we all know, old habits die hard, right? Follow on from that, the dysfunction, defining dysfunction, it's the gap between what you know, right, and what you apply. So take email. We all know what email is. We all know how it works. We all know the tricks of the trade with regards to email, and that's our backup strategy if anything happens. And bear in mind, in this new world of future working, remote working, the biggest barrier to remote working is actually dysfunction. Okay, and psychology will also tell us that sometimes we need what's called a nudge, right? Or we need to be assisted. Hence, Teams assist with doing the right thing or correct, in order to correct the course of action of that dysfunction. So, what is a nudge? I say, what is a nudge? It's not a push, right? It's not a direct hand telling you where you don't want to go, right? But it's more of an assist, right? Helping you to overcome that dysfunctional behavior, to help you make better decisions, and also to help you exercise better self-control. All right. It was actually based on behavioral modification theory. All right, which won a Nobel Prize back in 2017, Nobel Prize for Economics. And it forms the basis of what our company Teams Assist is about and trying to help a business achieve. That is helping business and teams within business to the right behavior. All right. And it's relatively new, but you see and hear governments using it. You hear some business using similar behavior. So the likes of Richard Bruton here in Ireland, around climate change. You hear him talking about let's nudge people slowly forward to take specific action that will help climate change. So how does it work, but what makes it possible? All right, and what makes it possible is us, human beings, right? The answer lies in that we all overestimate our own ability to do things, right? No one wants to believe that we're below average at anything. But you take something like driving at home. Everyone thinks we're a great driver. 100% of us nearly think that. Stats will show that's not the case. All right, 50% of us have to be not the best drivers. All right, so that's what creates what we call the nudge gap. So it's the difference between your actual behavior and your perceived behavior, right? And that helps us, and helps, I suppose, within a working environment. If you know, and it's clear that you actually aren't as good as you think, then it makes resistance to change easier. Okay, it improves your resistance to change, basically. So what about, you might say, well, that's fine, Connor, but what about people or situations where we need to nudge users outside of their comfort zone to counter that dysfunction, right? We've all heard the saying, you can bring the horse to water, you can't make it drink. But what we can do is make make users and people thirsty for change, right? And that's one of the principles of the nudging that we apply. Okay, and you can do that because ultimately we're all social animals. Okay, we're all socially aware. Look at the technology that's come on board in the past 20 years. But we all want to know what our friend, our neighbor, our peer, and most importantly in work, what our leaders are doing. So, we create this gap between ourselves and our peers. So if, your boss or somebody tells you, well, look, Connor, you have to do this, or we want you to adopt this technology, then subconsciously you're going to start, adopting it, right? So there's two pieces. There's the indirect social suggestions, and there's a direct assist in the form of a nudge. All right, we do that through what we've built, the front end, the back end. Essentially, it's this, right? It's based on user behavioral data. It's artificial intelligence that we gather from your company, and the way it works is we define, first of all, that dysfunction. Okay, what's causing the issue in the first place? Then we create that desire through indirect social suggestion, and make users and customers thirsty to change. We design the assist that will help people get to the right path, and then we deploy these, what we say are nudges, to push people along. Well, not push, guide people along, and organizations along on a correct path that will help them achieve what we're trying to achieve. All right, so you might think, well, what's he talking about, right? So let's give an example. Email, all right, is the number one dysfunction. We spoke about that earlier. I think even Dermot mentioned about the methodology. Email is, it's a asynchronous method. So you send an email, you may or may not get a response. You may not expect a response, right? But it breaks conversation. There's also, potentially multiple copies of emails floating around, multiple files. So it's really, it's not conducive for synchronous, connected behavior that in the future of work, i.e. remote working, is key. All right. With COVID, would you believe there's been an increase, and there's now 150 billion emails being sent daily, right? So I said about indirect social suggestion. Straight away, you say that 150 billion. There's the plant for what you shouldn't be doing. All right, but what? And I mean, you can say that to your CEO down. It's going to be clear. But what the assist or what the nudge does in this case for us, our software, our technology will stop you from sending the email. All right, so we'll stop you in your tracks. I would say we'll analyze what is in the email. So it could be people, places, data. I would say, hey, why don't you go over here to Microsoft Teams? Because in this channel or in this team or in this group, this file, this note, this document, all the data that you're actually sending in the email is here. So why not use it? Okay. Now with this timing, of course, said before, timing is the essence of life, comedy, but it's the essence of what we're trying to do in this nudging. You have to be caught at that moment, that oi moment, right? So think about it. If you're out there Friday afternoon, you're sending an email and you want to send the email because you want to get it off your desk, because you want to go away. It's the wrong thing to do, but yet you go ahead and do it, right? So if we stop you there and then, okay, and we say, hey, what are you doing? Are you sure you want to send that email? And if there's indirect social suggestions, if there's messaging, if we can say and show you that, well, look, Connor, there's 20 people on your team. 18 of those are actually using Microsoft Teams for 90% of their tasks daily, and they've done X, Y, and Z. Then you're slowly going to start and actually counter and change your behavior. Okay, and then it becomes then over time a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy where the email stops and the new the counter behavior to the dysfunction kicks in. So, it has to be continuous. The nudge has to be continuous. It might just happen straight away, but that's the theory and practice of what we're doing. So I know I spoke there about email, but, we, as a company, Teams Assist, we can apply it to anything that we can get data on and that we can measure, okay? So, for instance, in travel, we know, maybe not at the moment with COVID, but we know there has been over 2 billion meetings per year involving travel. Another huge area of dysfunction. We know that because Teams Assist was a finalist in 2017 in a Climate Launchpad, so a competition for green startups. And we got a lot of data and views of various things from there. So we know as well, for instance, that remote first companies, they can save up to 3 days productivity for every ton of carbon dioxide saved by avoiding business travel and by avoiding commuting to work. All right. Now that's 3 days for one person. On average, every person consumes about three tons of CO2 themselves. So you're talking a small company, medium-sized company, potentially saving up to 2 weeks productivity a year. Right. Now that's just a suggestion, a social suggestion. Put that out there. Now, if you applied the technology we have, you could then nudge or create the assist to guide people towards, well, look, you can do meetings in Teams, but not just meetings, you can collaborate many different ways. Now, as you said already, even thinking about it, we can deploy the technology to look at meetings, because if we all have more meetings with remote working, we need to make them more effective. So multiple uses there. I said at the very start of this, we're assisting behavioral change. That's what we're trying to do, but we can also actually assist the culture of a company, right? And that for, consultants and coaches and leaders out there is huge, right? The culture, if you look at it there, great definition, the culture of any org is shaped by the worst behavior that the leader is willing to tolerate. So think of what we're trying to do. We're up here, we're deploying nudges based on people's behavior, people being the leaders, because the leaders want to adopt this new change, right? So if the leader is doing it and it permeates down through the company, and we got everybody on board and we can actually influence the culture, right?
Okay, 5 minutes.
That's fine, Alan. Yeah, I'll be finished now in a minute. To just speak about productivity. And you hear collaboration platforms will always say, well, look, deploy it. It's great for doing X, Y, Z. How do you measure it, right? We know, right, through our work with our partners in NCI, in Trinity, in Confirm down in Limerick, and the ICBE, and the customers we work with, right? We've proven that just through the email nudging alone, that those companies actually have seen a 27% increase in their productivity. Or to flip it, they've seen a 27% more output, right? So there in itself is the goal you can present up to, your CEO or whoever. We've proven that we can make a change in terms of productivity. And we can do that because we can measure it, right? We can measure behavior. Our software will go in, it will analyze, it will look at your behavior over 6 and 12 months and help design that nudge to push you on the right path. But also, if you don't have Teams, it can also make the business case for Teams adoption very easy, and a very easy one, So, to finish up, Teams Assist or not, I think the key thing to stress, the time is now, right? Remote working is here. It's not going away. Every day this week, I've seen another company that has said they're going to consider it long term. Twitter, Facebook, Google, Microsoft themselves. So it's here. So why not, as a company, take that bold step to counter that dysfunction? Because I can guarantee you, if you do, you're going to end up with a more engaged, a more productive, and a better employee that will help you towards the the future of work, which is remote working. Thinking about it while the other guys were speaking, and saying about tips for remote working and tricks, a lot has been said. I would go back. My experience working for 4 or 5 years, you gotta connect with the person and understand and make sure that they understand what it's all about, how you're going to work. So I do some work as a coach as well, and it's all about contracting with the individual. So if you're working with someone remotely and they're used to meeting you, in the office 3 days a week, and suddenly in a remote situation, you're just speaking to them once for 30 minutes and there's no, other interaction, they're going to go, well, what's going on? So go back to the basics. I would say go back to basics and start from there, I'll just leave you with this good quote, Peter Drucker: if you can't measure it, you can't change it. With Teams Assist, we can measure it and we can help you change it. That's me. Thank you very much for your time.
Really interesting. So it's interesting to talk about social suggestions. I would suggest that might be social necessity. But we might get back to that question, because getting that balance between networking, social interaction, person to person, the very thing that we survive on as human beings, that it's getting that balance right. Whilst we are living in the world of COVID now, we will hopefully go back to the new norm, but the new norm will look different. That's what everyone is saying. So listen, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
For this presentation. So our last contribution this morning is from Richard. Richard, you're very welcome. Richard O'Farrell. Richard is the Director of EDC Engineering, and Richard's going to be talking about how he's using plugins for remote working. Thank you for joining us, Richard.
Very good. Can I share screen? I can.
Yeah.
1 second.
So we're bang on time.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Richard from MD of EDC. And with no EDC, we're farmers, mechanical and electrical engineers. We work in 3 offices in the UK, in London, Dublin and Cork. So we've been using Teams for 2 to 3 years now. And we've had a catapult, I suppose, in the last 6 to 8 weeks in terms of people who weren't engaging now are engaging because they have no choice. So I suppose across our 3 offices, we have 50 staff. So traditionally would have been working quite closely between the 3 offices. Now we have 50 offices, no different to a lot of other companies. So we've used it more and more as time has gone on. So I'm just going to show you how we are implementing it. 1 moment. Now, so we're primarily using it for our project delivery, for our project controls, and for our back of house projects. So we're still using traditional servers for our project outputs and deliverables. But we are trying our best now to move all of our comms and internal comms onto Teams and off emails. So what you can see there is one of our projects and all the add-ons that we're using. So any internal deliverables, schedules, any monitoring tools we have for internal outputs is all now captured in here. So it's proven to be quite good. There's a better blow up of that. So everything to do with delivering a project, we're doing now within Teams. We have viewing tools, which is great for the engineers who don't have Revit software, don't need Revit software, or Navis software. Simple viewing tools where you can put in the plugin. The model will be updated and you can spin around and move around the model as you need. So that's a particularly useful tool, particularly if you're in meetings and they want to see progress on the model can be updated and you can show the model within the team with the client rather than having to swap screens or get a modeler on board or anything of that order. So it's a very, very useful plugin. We manage our business through Dynamics 365 through the project element of that, which is an ERP. As part of that, we're using Power Apps to input into Dynamics, into Dynamics PSA. So again, we're just plugging in the Power Apps. We have the Power Apps on our phones and our tablets and our laptops. We also can plug it into Teams. So Teams allows you to put as much as you can into the team channel to make it easier. So even I just learned something today from Ralph, which is putting the forms into her. We have survey. We use Microsoft Forms a lot, and again, we haven't gone to the level of putting the survey. We haven't thought of it, putting the survey into the actual channel and team. So that's one that I must do shortly for another internal meeting. So the Power Apps is quite a powerful tool. A side note from Teams, but again, you're plugging in. This is mind maps. Again, we're plugging in the mind map. We have started using mind maps an awful lot since remote working. It's very, very useful. And again, rather than scratching on pens and paper, we're using the mind map tool. And again, the mind map then plugs into the channel, so everyone can see it and play with it. Again, Planner, well-known tool. Again, a lot of our internal meetings now, we're not taking too many notes. We're just taking tasks and actions. And that's an example of your tasks on the right-hand side and the update in the center of the tasks against the various people or areas. So we were asked to probably identify some of the problems and some of the good stuff and some of the bad stuff. So look, we have found that the direct calling on Teams for one-to-one, I have had about 7 or 8 already this morning, is taken over from the mobile phone. It's taken over from the desk phone. I think Sean mentioned, I'm aware that that calling externally is on the way from Teams. I think there's 1 or 2 companies in Ireland have it installed. So we're looking forward to it taking over from the desk phone altogether. I think it's on the way. And the file sharing is a big change as well. So instead of just emailing a file or using the server, just putting it straight onto the team, obviously is putting it onto the cloud, and that's a bit of a it's well worth doing. It's been very productive, but it's a bit of a human behavioral shift to do it as an automatic action. Some of the problems we've had. So in some of the social situations, we have used another tool where we've had some quiz nights and coffee meets and lunch meets and that, where we need more video. Teams has now gone to 3x3, I think, as of the last week or so. So that's been a big help. The backdrops was a problem, but I got sorted out about 2-3 weeks ago. You can see my backdrop here, so we can get some corporate backdrops to hide the house situation. And one thing there is, if you're using it a lot like we are, it would be very useful to have multiple versions of Teams to be able to open. At the moment, you can open one desktop and one Google or internet-based version of it, as far as I know. So it would be very useful to have multiple desktop applications open for speed. And that kind of wraps up our learnings on it, Alan.
Thank you, Richard. That was excellent. Particularly interested in the piece about the tasks and actions. I must look at that, because what we tend to do, again, we're all going back to our workplace, I suppose, but what we tend to do in the college, in the school, is we have a very good secretary, but she has to take a set of minutes, and then there's a set of, she has to type out the minutes, and there's actions, and so maybe there's a quicker or more efficient way of doing it, which would be good to find out about. So listen, thank you so much, Richard. And thank you all for our speakers this morning. I am your host this morning, Alan Hoare from TU Dublin, and you're attending the CitA Tech Trend 2020 series. We're approaching the end of this morning's talk, but however, I want to keep you online, all our attendees and our speakers. And I might ask our speakers to maybe to put on their cameras, and if a question comes to any of you, maybe you might put on your mic. So, if I may start, and then I'll elicit some questions from the delegates. Question for Sean.
Hi, Alan, yes.
Sean, you mentioned security is a new challenge facing companies when collaborating remotely. Can you give us an insight into some examples of these risks with Microsoft Teams?
Yes, and I think I don't want to scare people off. Obviously, the tool obviously is great for collaboration. You just need to think about the risks. So one of the risks are obviously when you look at external access and guest access. There are two separate issues within Teams. So external access allows anyone from outside to IM or chat with anyone in your organization. And what we are seeing now is security risks where people are being social engineered through Teams. Because obviously, if you give someone a new application, say Teams, and there you go, that's our collaboration. So if anyone's speaking to you, this is how we now work together, right? Problem is, scammers and hackers are now using that to social engineer, saying, "Hi, I'm from your IT department. Can you please tell me your last known password?" And people are obviously responding. So you need to close that down. You close that function down and know who you're collaborating with. And one of the first questions we ask people is, think about a collaboration strategy. What do you want for your collaboration, for your business? And then use that as your guide to say how you're going to lock down Teams. Second one is guest, of course, guest access as well. That needs to be, unfortunately, switched on by default. You need to be able to control who is being allowed into your Teams. And that's where data leakage or spillage can happen very easily. And again, it's breaking SharePoint. So there you go. That's two examples.
Thank you, Sean. So, I don't know, we have a question there from Rory Hayden. Rory, you with us from TU Dublin? Is Rory
Hi, Alan. Yeah, sorry, I am.
A question out there?
Yeah, my question is around, I've been using Teams for quite a while, and we're switching back and forth because we were using a couple of different softwares for screencasting. And I'm just trying to figure out, I've been looking at MS Stream, which is an app attached to the 365, and I was just wondering, did anyone have any experience of this app? And I noticed Ralph mentioned it, but when I go into it, it seems to be limited to 15 minutes, the length of video. And I just wanted to wonder, was there anyone have any experience on it?
Which version of Office 365 are you using?
Which version of MS? I'll tell you now.
Sorry, this is Ken Montague from ArcDocs. The reason for asking the question is each version of Office 365 is a little bit different in terms of its tier. And Microsoft Stream is only on a higher tier, gives you greater capability. So if you're on a basic stream, not a basic, but the entry level tier of Office 365, Stream is only as a trial, and that's why you're only getting small storage space. Once you move to a higher tier, Stream becomes a little bit more manageable. So, I mean, advice would be, if you are looking at a tier, move to Microsoft 365 opposed to the Business Premium package, and you'll get more capability.
Okay. Well, that's something I'll have to talk to work about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just from Microsoft Stream, sorry, but not here to sell Microsoft products, but Microsoft Stream is a great tool. It does translation, it does transcripts. If you know how to work with text files and things like that to get translation done, or you have someone that can help you with translation sometimes, because translating directly from English to, say, Italian or Spanish or something like that can be difficult, but it's useful in the way that if you need to get a basic script that you can get someone to look at that has Spanish skills, they can look at it and correct the script, and you can upload the new script, and then you've got captions in a different language.
Yeah, because we're looking at it from the point of view of demonstration, like for delivery of course material in TU Dublin. And I suppose we need editing. There has to be a level of editing available to it. So I think we'd have to go with the premium version, because we have been looking at other softwares like Screencast-O-Matic, but it defeats the purpose when we have to move into different formats or move out of Microsoft and then into something else. I just find it kind of confuses things a little,
I think that the editing features will come at a later point. I mean, there's basic editing, Your administrator will have to make you an admin so that you can do those edits. But once you own the video within Microsoft Streams, there is basic editing, pretty much like YouTube and YouTube Creator.
Okay.
So,
yeah. So Ken,
Okay, thanks for that.
so Ken and Rory, you could have maybe an offline on that one, or have a Teams meeting about that. So I might throw a grenade in here just for a second. I mean, the speakers, do you believe that more companies will give up offices? Partly. Maybe anyone can come in. Richard, Connor.
Yeah. Well, I suppose So, Connor, I'll just quickly give a quick background to ourselves. We did that ourselves, and it was only possible because the technology allowed it. And I know John asked the question earlier: how do we do this no visit thing? It actually was a very, very scary decision for any company to say, I'm no longer going to visit you, where before, obviously, that was the norm, right? That was so we had to do all kinds of interesting things. We work with psychologists actually to help us. You know, how people say, I want to have a coffee with you. So we actually send virtual coffees through Starbucks vouchers, right? No, John is making the note there. It's actually really cool because, okay, it's a social thing, right? It's a social. Not that we're going to have the same coffee at the same time. It just means that I've actually now given you a coffee. And then the next time we're on a meeting, we can have a coffee together, right? Also, another thing, I think the future of work, actually, Forbes has been talking about this. COVID has just accelerated that. And the future, obviously, was defined as no offices, remote working, people working in distributed teams. And here's the interesting thing. What Grow Remote is obviously trying to promote is the economic benefit for Ireland. If we all think remote working, incredibly, we can now employ people in anywhere, obviously there's decent broadband, anywhere in the country. That means we can repopulate our towns and villages that were dying because everyone was moving into Dublin and Cork and Galway.
Actually, I'm conscious of the time here. Thank you, Sean. And of course, there's been lots of talk even before COVID of digital disruption, and of course this pandemic has been significant. It's been very disruptive across the world. Maybe that's even you could even use a stronger term than that. But I'm just wondering, will companies, relook at their the physical office space they need going forward, and maybe come up with some sort of hybrid solution?
They're going to have to, Alan. I think if you have a situation where we have to go into a lockdown again, organizations need to be ready for that circumstance. So I think organizations now are planning for potentially a future lockdown. Say even in the UK, my office is based in Milton Keynes. They're looking at, if they go into another lockdown, how are we going to get everyone working? And I'm working on a project now thinking of that. So I think organizations are getting themselves in a mental state to say, this could happen again in the future. We need to be able to react to it if it does happen and be able to run with it. The other thing about working from home or having get sort of those office spaces coming back, it might free up some of these housing problems we have around these cities as well, and enable these office spaces to go back into housing stock again. So there's another sort of social thing to be thinking about when you're talking about that as well.
Yeah,
I think our experience is looking at a partial solution. I haven't met too many companies looking at 100%. We're going remote now. I've met 99% who are looking at 2 days from home, 3 days in the office, or a similar solution. We've seen companies in the London market looking to share offices now, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, one company, Monday, Friday, a different company. Some kind of bizarre stuff like that going on. And there's also the debate, obviously, look, they're going to be designing offices now. You need more space in offices rather than less space in offices.
And maybe more spaces in homes and apartments and such like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's an impact there to all the design teams on that as well.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Thanks, Richard. So we're coming very close to the end. We've got another couple of minutes. Any other questions from our delegates? No, or Sean? Any other questions? Any other observations from the speakers?
Well, I'd like to actually help Richard there, he actually had one of his challenges. One of your last ones you had on your list was how do I get multiple? Believe it or not, that solution actually appeared about 2 months ago. So it's very simple. You need the New Edge browser, right? I'll send you on the link. New Edge browser, and in there, under settings, there's a thing called web apps. So you can actually create multiple versions of Teams now, because if we're obviously a guest on someone else's team, it's very annoying, isn't it? Because you have to click on the tenant, it switches you out of your own tenant, right? Very annoying, right? This is what we've actually had. I've had always a second PC in order to do that. That wouldn't recommend that as an ongoing solution. So now you can have multiple apps, and they can start. You can set them up to start every time you start your computer. So you can have multiple Teams apps running at the same time.
Okay, that's useful. I actually think I found that about a week and a half ago and failed to install it.
Oh yeah, it's about okay.
Yeah, cool. Let's talk.
Yeah, let's talk, exactly.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay, so I think I might bring things to a close, if I may. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this morning. I learned so much, and I hope you all did too. So first of all, I'd like to thank our CitA team, for Shannon Cray and all the guys in the background, including Susan from Cloud Assist, for all the support you've given us over the last few weeks. To our excellent speakers this morning. I suppose maybe just to summarize, Sean, you spoke about MS Teams for teamwork and the importance of more efficient use of our time. That was coming out very strongly from your presentation. I know John is trying to balance work with and the need for social interaction with his guys and his team to keep them motivated. All very admirable. Dermot, the importance of linking corporate strategy with supporting technology and the importance of training. Ralph gave us a good, I suppose, account of the breadth of the MS functionality on Teams, and wish him every success with his digital construction program. Conor, very insightful presentation. The challenge of email. I still don't quite get how you can give someone a kick up the backside to stop using email. But this idea of I suppose dysfunctional behavior. I know I've seen my inbox filling up. I can see it filling up by the second, and it's a real challenge for me trying to prioritize each day. Did you get my email? Yes, I did. I got it 2 minutes ago. I can't respond right now. So you're trying to kind of constantly prioritize. And Richard, your use of Power Apps, the mind maps. I know I use them a lot with students. They're great, and I must find out more about that tasks and actions piece, because we seem to spend our time typing out minutes, and it just takes too long. Again, our sponsors, what could we do without you? Diatech and DCT Group and Evercam, i3PT and SIS. To Microsoft and Cloud Assist, we're hoping to build a great relationship with Microsoft going forward, and Cloud Assist if we can. I think there's more of a conversation to be had here. And to you, the delegates, all 50 plus or so that we were with this morning, we really do appreciate you taking the time and joining us. So I'm going to have to sign off now, I suppose, and join another Teams meeting perhaps. But that was really good, guys. And we recorded the meeting as well. And I think we may well be coming back to this topic very soon. Okay. So just to let you all know that the next meeting that the Alliance will be hosting is the 10th of June. It's the final, I suppose, prior to the summer of the Digital Transformation Series. Delighted to announce that we've got the Construction Innovation Hub UK presenting. We've got RII, David Brown, RKD. We've got a company from the US called Manufacton, who are connecting manufacturers with off-site construction companies. And we've also got Vision Build, which is the CISC off-site company. So, maybe give us maybe look to support that as we move into the summer and the autumn preparing for Tech Live. So thank you so much. Stay safe. Keep teaming. and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Okay,
Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
And
Bye-bye.
enjoy the fine weather. Enjoy the fine weather. Thank you.